Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is the Tour de France Stage 3, 182 kilometers, 3 climbs on today's stage, and 1 sprint point classification midway through the stage. Now, today's stage in general was a sleeper, but you definitely want to tune in to the last 15 kilometers to go. When the racing started from kilometer 0, is Magnus Cort Nelson, the KOM race leader here at the Tour de France. He shot out like a cannon from the peloton and went solo throughout most of today's stage. He'll get wrapped up with about 50 kilometers to go, but before he did, he took all of the 3 KOM summits on today's stage to add some more points to his KOM jersey classification here at the Tour de France. And let me remind you guys, he is Danish and we are in Denmark, so he was loved by all the fans throughout today's stage, and really about the only thing worth watching. Now, like I said, if you want to tune in, you want to tune in at about 15 kilometers to go. If we back it up just a little bit with about 20 kilometers to go, when the peloton really started getting nervous, we're going to see Quinn Simmons Trek Segafredo, and he's starting to pass on the left side of the road in the grass past UAE Team Emirates Tadej Pogacar. Let me remind you, Tadej Pogacar is a 2-time defending Tour de France champion here. And when you start riding these road bikes into the grass at any point in time, you can really slip out and crash. So when we're watching Quinn Simmons pass in the grass here, this is really an amateur move and a little bit too much panicking. When we go back to the stories from the past seasons, and you hear stories from Peter Sagan talking about how there just isn't enough respect in the peloton, this is what he's getting at. I love what Quinn Simmons is trying to do here in terms of the motivation of getting up to his team that's up in the center of the road, Trek Segafredo. He can't get around the edges, so he's passing in the grass. But at this point in time, you still got 20 kilometers to go. So unless it's 100% panic mode at this point in time, Quinn Simmons, this is not a very intelligent tactic. If you crash right here, you're done in the Tour de France, and you possibly take out UAE Team Emirates Tadej Pogacar, and as we look a little bit further in the picture, he's passing by Jumbo-Visma. So if he crashes at this point in time, he might take out both the 2 big GC favorites here, Primož Roglič, Tadej Pogacar, and Jonas Vingegaard from Jumbo-Visma along with those 2. So I don't like this move. I'll show you a little bit further as he gets up to the front of the peloton. He slots over to the center with Trek Segafredo there in the center of the road. And he doesn't even take a pull on the front at this point in time. He will be magnificent later. He'll take a pull for Mads Pedersen and keep their sprinter up at the front. But at this point in time, this is what I'm talking about, not panicking. We'll see him slip back and he'll slide behind his Trek Segafredo teammates. And really, if you do the math, if you bring it all the way back to 20 kilometers to go, when he went off-road and into the grass on the left side of the road, he could have been a little bit calmer and just found your way through the peloton over to the right side, and you probably would have ended up on the tail end of the Trek Segafredo train anyways without the drama of possibly crashing yourself and taking out favorites here at the Tour de France. Now, up front with about 10 kilometers to go, 10.5 or 6, I believe it was, the road starts to narrow, and we're going to see a crash back there, and it's going to block up the Tour de France favorites here because it's Bahrain victorious with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 8 riders from their team caught in this crash. Let me remind you, you only start the Tour de France with 8, so that's 100% of Bahrain victorious caught behind the crash, and the road is blocked up. EF Education Easy Posts aren't going to have much more luck. Rigoberto Urán's caught up in this crash, and let me remind you, he was chasing all day at the finish when he was caught behind the crash on yesterday's stage 2. Rigoberto Urán will lose some time, and Jack Haig from Bahrain victorious will lose some about 30 seconds, 45 seconds at the end of today's stage because they weren't able to get back on. Up front, after that crash, you see the peloton. It is driving hard, fast, and the sprinters are motivated to win here on stage 3 of the Tour de France. They'll cross the bridge with just about 8 kilometers to go, and shortly after that, we're going to see it's Quick Step on the front. Quick Step's lining it up. They only got 3 guys on the front. When we look in the picture a little further back, though, Fabio Jakobsen, the best lead-out man in the world. Michael Morkov is right there with him. Up front with Quick Step drilling it with just 3 guys up there. They're going to have a little competition because Jumbo-Visma, they want in on the fight, and they're trying to take over the train. They get it for just a little bit, but not that long, only talking about 400 meters at the most, because Quick Step are back in action. The next team to come up to the front, only about a kilometer, 500 200 meters later, it's going to be Team Ineos. Ineos is driving hard up the right side of the road, and again, Quick Step. Now they got reinforced number. All 5 riders are at the front and drilling it, and they'll come right back by Ineos. Next team that's starting to make this race exciting, we're going to see a little bit of fight from Mathieu van der Poel with 3.5 kilometers to go. It's Alpecin de Koenig on the right side of the road. Only problem is, like I've commented before when we're talking Mathieu van der Poel, and guys, he's a legend when it comes to the classics and entertaining all his fans, don't get me wrong, but he does not know how to do a proper team lead out, and this is just another one of these examples to go along with that incredibly terrible Giro stage lead out he tried to do early in the stages at the Giro d'Italia. Now, when we get back here, Mathieu van der Poel, when you're looking at the pictures, you're thinking he looks magnificent. And in terms of power, he is blowing past the Quick Step train. He's in full flight on the right side of the road. He's got 3 teammates lined up on his wheel, and he looks fantastic. Only problem is, when you do a lead out like this with so much energy put into the pedals in just 200 meters time, you've tired out all your teammates. Mathieu van der Poel, no one's taught you how to do the proper lead out. We'll go into the next turn, and when we come out, it's Quick Step, and they're lined up right next to Mathieu van der Poel. Quickly after that, Quick Step will move to the left side of the road. Now we got a drag race between Mathieu van der Poel and the Quick Step train. Only difference is Quick Step know how to do a lead out here. They've been trained since the existence of this Belgium team. Mathieu van der Poel from the Netherlands, he pulled so hard he blew up, and his teammate blew up too. Alpecin de Koenig will do the best they can with what's left, and they'll move over to the left side of the road to get back on to the team that knows how to do a lead out here on stage 3 of the Tour de France. Quick Step's drilling it at the front. And now with 1.5 kilometers to go, it's Casper Asgreen's turn to get on the front again as he's driving it for Quick Step. On his wheel, he's got all of the main guys here because it's Florian Sénéchal, the French national champion, locked on there. Michael Morkov sitting third wheel, and Fabio Jakobsen, yesterday's magnificent sprinter here at the Tour de France, who won yesterday's stage, is locked in on fourth wheel. We go under 1 kilometer to go, and as it's Casper Asgreen pulling off, it's Florian Sénéchal's time to go to work. He's got to do a big pull and got to get to about 500 meters to go. There's a left turn coming up at 800 meters to go, and when they go into this turn, this is when things get tricky and things start to go AWOL for Quick Step. Up front is 2 Quick Step riders going in the front, and they got Fabio Jakobsen on the wheel of Michael Morkov sitting third position. If I'm being nitpicking here, and I'm really nitpicking, Quick Step, if they had moved all the way over to the left, they would have controlled the inside of this turn. Instead, they started this turn more towards the center. And guess what? It's the veteran, the wily veteran who has been locked onto the Quick Step train since 5 kilometers ago, Peter Sagan. He does a big acceleration over the Jumbo-Visma duo of Christophe Laporte and Wout van Aert. That's right, Christophe Laporte is leading out Wout van Aert, and I want to back up the film. I want to back it up to the point competition sprint halfway here with 90 kilometers to go in today's stage 3. Because Christophe Laporte led out Wout van Aert to get maximum points amongst the competitors here for the green jersey. Wout won the point competition. Peter Sagan ended up 4th because Christophe Laporte kept sprinting and then pipped Peter Sagan for the points at the line. That was a magnificent job at the points competition sprint here by Christophe Laporte. But things are going to go AWOL here for Jumbo-Visma's Christophe Laporte, and he's going to make a big no-no. As we get more deep into this final left turn with 800 meters to go, Fabio Jakobsen, because Quick Step took the turn a little bit too center, and because Peter Sagan, as wily as he is, he shot up the inside, and you always want to control the inside of the turns because then no one can take it away. What's happening? Christophe Laporte accelerated past Fabio Jakobsen, and then Jakobsen looks like he's getting pushed a little bit too close to the wheel of Michael Morkov, or he just can't make the turn at the same speed as his 2 Quick Step teammates in front of him. He swings wide, locks up just a little bit with Intermarché, and that's going to pull him off his Marco Morkov leadoff's wheel. Up front, Florian Seneschal doesn't know what's happening. He's drilling it on the pedals because it's only 700 meters to go for a stage victory, a back-to-back-to-back stage victory here at the Tour de France. For a quick step, with Florian Seneschal drilling as hard as he can, he'll get Michael Morkov all the way to about 400 meters to go, and then Michael Morkov will punch it on the pedals and start an impressive acceleration. The wily lead-out veteran, the best in the world, now he looks back over his shoulder and he realizes at that moment that Fabio Jakobsen is too far back when he looks the right side over the shoulder. Now this is a work of art right here from Michael Morkov. He knows Fabio Jakobsen is trapped between the barriers and won't be able to pass any of the sprinters in front of him. So Michael Morkov will pull off hard left to the center of the road. When the lead-out rider Morkov pulls to the left, that opens up a lane. So now all of a sudden back there Fabio Jakobsen has a shot still of winning here at stage 3. When Michael Morkov pulls off to the left, Christophe Laporte will start a sprint to the left side of Michael Morkov, but Wout van Aert won't follow his main lead-out man here for Jumbo-Visma, and he'll start to pass on the right side of Michael Morkov with about 225 meters to go. Now when we look at the picture, look at it closely because all the best sprinters in the world still have a shot of winning here at stage 3. Wout van Aert starts his kick and he is throwing in everything from the center of the road, and now all of a sudden Wout van Aert's going to go from the center all the way to the fencing. At this moment, we look at the back of the picture. Caleb Ewan is next to the fence trying to salvage today's stage, but he knows he's not going to win the stage. Now he's trying to salvage his Tour de France chances as he's got to back off the pedals because Peter Sagan directly in front of him, and Wout van Aert, who put everybody next to the fencing, is still sprinting 100% for the line. Now he'll back off just a little bit from the fence there, so it looks like it's a legit fair sprint to everybody watching today's finish of the Tour de France. Wout van Aert will kick hard. Only problem is coming from the back is Dylan Groenewegen, who came out of nowhere, and now he's slotted between the hole of Christophe Laporte and Wout van Aert, and he's coming up fast. Behind Dylan Groenewegen, though, is going to be Jasper Philipsen from Alpecin de Koenig, who came out of nowhere, talking about, I don't know, 12, 15 spots back. And because Christophe Laporte, who started his sprint and never stopped it when Wout van Aert came by him, Christophe Laporte still trying to snag a result here in the top 10 of the classification on today's stage 3 instead of just sitting up. With that speed from Christophe Laporte, guess what's happened? Jasper Philipsen's coming from the back, and now he's slinging a shot off of Wout van Aert's teammate, who's drag racing him to the line here on stage 3. When we see the bike throw at the finish, it's going to be Dylan Groenewegen that throws the bike and wins today's stage for Bike Exchange. Wout van Aert gets second on the stage. Third on the stage is Jasper Philipsen, who did an amazing job coming from the back thanks to the help from Jumbo-Visma Christophe Laporte, who kept sprinting. Fourth on the stage, Peter Sagan, who's arguing and pointing out to Wout van Aert that he clearly took everyone from the center of the road to the fencing and almost caused a crash here on stage 3 of the Tour de France. After the line, Peter Sagan will have words with Wout van Aert, and we see a little nod from Wout van Aert, but that's all he's going to say. When I left the studios at Peacock at this point in time, Wout van Aert, before I started shooting the video here, still has second on the stage at the Tour de France. But in my mind, 100%, no doubt about it, Wout van Aert should be losing the green jersey that he secured more points on for today's second place finish. He still held on to yellow, which he would keep, but he should absolutely be relegated all the way to the back of the field because he almost crashed Caleb Ewan, who was tangled up with Peter Sagan and the fencing, and Peter Sagan, who was robbed of any chance of winning here at stage 3 of the Tour de France. Dylan Groenewegen, the big winner here, because Wout van Aert going all the way from the center of the road to the right side fencing opened up the gap for Dylan Groenewegen to come hard when Ewan was hitting the brakes not to crash into Peter Sagan, and Sagan had to back off the pedal strokes. Now with that victory, Dylan Groenewegen, who, let me remind you, had a massive suspension 2 years ago for causing the crash at the Tour of Poland. Now, in my mind, we have to discuss it. We have to talk about it here on the Butterfly Effect, the crash that Dylan Groenewegen gave to Fabio Jakobsen on that Tour of Poland stage back in 2020. I don't believe everything that went down that stage is Dylan Groenewegen's fault. Did he cause the crash? Yes. But in my mind, the UCI is really to blame for causing that crash. We have seen these tactics amongst all of the sprinters, going from the center of the road to the right fencing, and we still saw it here today on stage 3. And guess what? Because nobody crashed, Wout van Aert, who's the big-time favorite while wearing yellow and green today, isn't relegated to the back of the field. But if we go back to that Tour of Poland, today's race, when you see that hook all the way from the center to the right of the road, what is that telling the sprinters? At this point in time, it's telling Peter Sagan that you better hook if you want to win. It's telling Caleb Ewan, who lost the stage today and any chance of trying to get more green jersey points today, telling him that he better hook the next rider. Dylan Groenewegen, who got a 9-month suspension and put Fabio Jakobsen into a coma on that Tour of Poland crash, it's telling him that, hey, what did I get suspended for? I get to win today's stage. Wout van Aert still gets second, keeps the green jersey points, maximum points here with that second place. I mean, the UCI and ASO at this point in time, it's so clear. You look at the picture, center of the road right here with Wout van Aert when he starts his sprint at about 200, 225 meters to go. And clearly when you look at about 75 meters to go, Wout van Aert is almost all the way against the fence, taking out Peter Sagan and almost crashing Caleb Ewan on today's stage. ASO are to blame. When we look at the Tour of Poland and you look at the way that podium was set up there on the right side of the road, that's really what did the damage to Fabio Jakobsen and causing him to be in a coma and losing multiple teeth and almost near death after that crash in Tour of Poland. ASO, UCI need to relegate right now Wout van Aert on this stage 3 and then take away his green jersey points, or they're going to keep having these kind of problems. And when I go all the way back to Tour of Poland and everybody's blaming Dylan Groenewegen for this, I could take you back a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. That is the MO of every sprinter in major league cycling and amateur races, because that is what's allowed at times. And this is the biggest race in the world, Tour de France, caught on video. Wout van Aert going from the center all the way to the right, and he isn't relegated and is standing there on the podium wearing the green points jersey at the end of today's stage. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I've got more stages, of course, at the Tour de France. Rest day tomorrow, then stage 4 for the butterfly effect. So make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.